You know that moment? You're sitting across from her at dinner. The restaurant is loud. Your food is getting cold. And you look up from your phone just long enough to catch her eyes. And there's nothing there. Not anger, not coldness, just absence. Like you're looking at someone who is physically in the room, but has already mentally checked out. And something in you goes, when did this happen? You try to remember the last time a conversation with her felt like a conversation, not a coordination. Not a logistics meeting about whose turn it is to handle what, but an actual exchange of two people who are curious about each other. And you can't. Why does this keep happening? That's the question, right? The one that lives in your chest at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. Is this just what long-term relationships feel like? Am I the problem? Is she still in love with me, or has she just gotten used to me? Here's what nobody explains. The relationship didn't get harder because your love faded. It got harder because something shifted in the emotional safety between you, and neither of you knew how to talk about it. And so it went underground. It became a quiet distance that neither of you named, until one day you realized she's been quietly turning her attention elsewhere. Not because she stopped caring, but because she stopped feeling seen. You're not failing at love. This isn't a sign that you chose the wrong person. And it's not too late, not yet. But it's closer to too late than most people think. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 painful but critical signs that she's quietly choosing another man, not necessarily physically, but emotionally, psychologically, in the ways that matter most. And more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly what to do about it so you can reverse course before that quiet choice becomes irreversible. Let's get into it. But before we get into the signs, I need you to understand something that changes everything about how you see this situation. Most couples believe that when a woman starts to emotionally disconnect, it's because she stopped loving him, that the love faded, that she just fell out of it. But the real truth is this: she didn't stop loving him. Love doesn't just disappear. What happened is the safety left. And when safety leaves a relationship, love doesn't vanish. It goes underground. It stops being expressed. It stops being visible. But it doesn't stop existing. Here's what that means for your nervous system, and hers. Your partner's nervous system is always reading you before her mind can catch up. Every time you come home shut down and avoidant, her nervous system registers danger. Every time she brings up something emotional and you go logical or defensive, her nervous system reads that as rejection, not as problem solving. And over time, the accumulation of those moments builds a wall between you that neither of you consciously built. It's just scar tissue, forming slowly, over 100 small moments that never got repaired. And here's what most couples never figure out. When a woman feels unsafe to express her full emotional self with her partner, she doesn't just go quiet. She starts to look for that emotional safety somewhere else. Not always another man, sometimes a friend, a colleague, a therapist, a hobby that finally makes her feel seen. But when it is another man, it's almost always because he offered her something you used to offer her and recently stopped. Emotional presence. Feeling heard without being judged. Being curious about her inner world without trying to fix it. This isn't about you being a bad guy. It's about a cycle. And the cycle can be broken, but only if you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. So let's talk about the signs. Main body, the 4 painful signs. Sign 1, the emotional distance nobody named. Most couples don't notice the moment intimacy starts to die. They think it's dramatic, a fight, a betrayal, a single moment that broke everything. But it's not. It's 1,000 micro moments where one person reaches for connection and the other doesn't reach back. Not out of malice, but out of overwhelm, out of distraction. Out of the belief that they can get back to her later. They can address it when things calm down. They can reconnect when work gets easier. But the thing about emotional distance is that it compounds, like interest, like a debt no one acknowledges. Here's the deeper truth. When you withdraw emotionally, her nervous system doesn't know the difference between he's stressed and he's checked out on me. Your nervous system can't make that distinction either. When someone you love stops turning toward you, the alarm sounds regardless of the reason. And so, she starts to prepare for disappointment. She stops reaching. She stops expecting you to show up in those small moments. And what looks like independence is actually a grief response. She's letting go of the version of you she thought she was going to have. You can see it in the contrast. You come home exhausted, sit on the couch, scroll your phone. She says, "Hey, how was your day?" And you say, "Fine, busy, I'm really tired." That's the disconnecting version.
That's the one that happens 1,000 times before she finally stops asking. But here's the other version. Same moment, same exhaustion. You put your phone down, you look at her, you say, "Honestly, it was a lot. Can we just sit for a second before I tell you about it?" That's it. That's the whole difference. And what's moving through her in that second is, he actually saw me this time. That's the shift that turns a relationship that feels like a negotiation into one that feels like a refuge. That's when the distance starts to close without either of you having to say a word. Sign 2. The conversations that stop at the surface. Most people in relationships think communication is about talking more. More conversations, more check-ins, more scheduled time to connect. But that's not what communication is about. Communication is about what happens beneath the surface. The emotional truth that gets transmitted when two people are actually brave enough to be honest. She used to tell you things. Not just what happened during her day, but what it felt like. The interpretation she made about the email her boss sent. The way a conversation with her friend left her feeling uncertain about something. The quiet fear she has about her mom. The question she can't stop thinking about her career. And then she stopped. And if you asked her why, she'd probably say, I don't know. I just didn't feel like it. But here's what's actually happening. She tested you. Over and over. With different things she tried to share. And somewhere along the way, she concluded that the things she brings to the surface don't come back with curiosity. They come back with solutions, with dismissals, with, that's not a big deal, or, you should just do this, or, why does that bother you? Criticism always feels like rejection, even when it's delivered calmly, even when your intention is to help. Because what she's hearing underneath the advice is, the thing you feel isn't valid. You shouldn't feel that way. I know better than you do about your own experience. That erodes safety faster than anything else. The pattern most couples fall into. She shares something vulnerable, he tries to fix it, she gets quiet, he interprets that as, she doesn't want to talk about it anymore, and he stops trying. Both people walk away thinking the other one isn't interested. And the real tragedy is that both people would be wrong. Check this contrast. She says, I've been feeling really overwhelmed with work lately. I don't know if I'm in the right role.
The disconnecting version. Have you thought about talking to your manager? Maybe you need to set better boundaries. Have you tried to figure out what you actually want? Every question sounds helpful. Every question is actually doing damage. The connecting version. That sounds really heavy. How long have you been carrying that? And then you wait. You let the silence hold. You let her decide if she wants to say more. And what her brain is quietly registering is, he actually wants to know how I'm doing, not just what I'm going to do about it. That's what makes her feel emotionally available to you again. Not a conversation, a felt experience of being understood. That's what she felt in the beginning. That's what she's looking for now, even if she's not looking for it with you. Sign 3. The emotional unavailability that looks like availability. Now this one is tricky because it doesn't look like what you'd expect. Most couples would identify emotional unavailability as someone who doesn't share, doesn't talk, doesn't express their inner world. And that does happen, but there's a more dangerous version. The version where your partner is physically present, shows up for you in practical ways, does things around the house, is involved, but isn't emotionally present, isn't actually there when it matters, isn't able to hold your emotional experience without collapsing into their own. She might still have sex with you. She might still go on dates with you. She might still plan weekends with you and your friends. But when you try to talk about something real, something that matters to you, you notice she goes somewhere else. Not literally, she's right there. But you can feel her attention leave the room. You can feel her mind planning what she's going to say next, instead of actually listening to what you just said. That's emotional unavailability that looks like availability. And it's one of the most disorienting experiences in a relationship. Because you can never quite point to it. You can never say, you don't care. Because she does things that look like caring. But you feel it. In your body. The absence of being met. The deeper psychological truth here is this. Emotional availability isn't about presence. It's about capacity. And she may have lost the capacity to be present with your emotional experience. Not because she doesn't love you, but because she's been overwhelmed by her own for so long that she has nothing left to give. When your nervous system is running hot, you cannot attune to someone else's. It's not a choice. It's a neurological limitation. And here's where it gets painful. If she's not emotionally available to you, she will eventually become emotionally available to someone who is available to her. Not because she's looking for it, but because that's how human connection works. We gravitate toward the people who can actually hold us. The contrast. You share something vulnerable, a fear, a doubt, a hope. The disconnecting response. She responds to the facts of what you said, not the feeling underneath it. Yeah, that makes sense. Did you see the game last night? Her brain is moving on. Yours is still standing there waiting to be held. The connecting response. She pauses. She looks at you. She says, "That sounds like it really matters to you." She doesn't need to solve it. She doesn't need to agree with it. She just needs to make contact with your inner experience. And something in her is saying, he needs me to stay with this, not for him, but for us. That's the shift that changes the whole quality of the relationship. When she starts to feel like someone who can hold you, not just physically, but emotionally, she stops looking for that experience elsewhere. Sign 4. The quiet choices that speak louder than words. This is the sign that most people miss entirely. Not because it's hidden, but because it's made up of 1,000 tiny decisions that look like nothing individually. Like her phone suddenly becoming more interesting when you're in the room. Like her suddenly being very busy on certain nights of the week. Like her getting ready to go out looking different than she used to. More effort, less explanation. Most couples don't investigate these small shifts. They chalk them up to normal life. People get busy. People have friends. People change. But here's what changes everything. Patterns. Not incidents. Patterns. The difference between one incident and a pattern is repetition plus change in baseline. If she's always been social, her having a busy week doesn't mean anything. But if she used to come home and decompress with you, and now she goes out 3 nights a week and doesn't mention it, that's a change in baseline. That's a pattern. And patterns tell you where her emotional energy is going. Now, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about catching her. This isn't about surveillance. This is about noticing what's actually happening in your relationship so that you can show up to it consciously instead of letting it drift while you convince yourself everything is fine. Here's the deeper emotional truth. When someone starts quietly choosing someone else, even emotionally, even non-physically, it's rarely about the other person.
It's about what the other person represents. The other person represents a version of connection she used to have with you and doesn't feel with you anymore. Safety, curiosity, being seen, feeling like herself. The other man isn't the competition. The version of you that you used to be. That's the competition. And every day you don't show up as that version is another day she gets more used to being without it. Check the contrast. You notice she's been going out more. The disconnecting version. You get suspicious, you start asking questions, you look for evidence. And what happens? She withdraws. She gets defensive. She starts to feel like a kid being interrogated. The walls go up, the distance grows. The connecting version. You have one honest conversation. You say, "Hey, I want to check in. I've noticed things feel different between us lately. Not bad, just different. And I want to make sure we're still connected." No accusations, no demands. Just honesty and an invitation. And what's moving through her is something like, he's actually paying attention. He's actually willing to look at this. Not defensiveness, not walls, curiosity. That's when you can actually be honest with each other about what's happening. And that's the only way anything actually changes. Close and call to action. So here's what I want you to take out of this video. It's not a checklist. It's not 4 signs to watch for so you can catch her doing something. This is an invitation to look at your relationship with more honesty and more courage than you've been giving it. And to ask yourself where the safety has quietly disappeared. Because that's what this is really about. Not whether she's choosing another man, but whether you've stopped being the person she chooses first when she needs to feel safe. You can't control what she does. You can't control what she's already doing. But you can control whether you become the partner who shows up. Emotionally, consistently, with curiosity instead of solutions, with presence instead of distraction. That's not a communication hack. This is just what 2 emotionally mature people naturally do. And it starts with you deciding to be that. Not for her, not to fix things, but because this is who you want to be in a relationship. That's the identity shift that changes everything. And here's what nobody explains. The work of becoming that person isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing. Willing to look at the parts of yourself that have been avoidant. Willing to sit with discomfort. Willing to say the thing you've been afraid to say. Willing to feel like you're losing control and staying anyway. That's the work. That's what the version of you that she fell in love with actually did. The relationship you want starts the moment you stop waiting for it to get better and decide to become what makes it better. Real intimacy doesn't start when you find the right person. It starts when you decide to become one. If this video landed for you, if you felt something shift in how you see your relationship, I need you to do 2 things. Subscribe to this channel because I'm going to keep showing up here with content that goes deeper than what everyone else is saying.
And drop a comment below. I read every single one. Tell me which of these signs hit hardest for you. What have you noticed? What are you going to do differently? I'll see you in the next one.